Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Hulkbuster. Been kind of busy lately, so I haven't really had a chance to make too many videos, but with the latest update out, I did want to take a look at least one tier 4, and since Hulkbuster has PvP skills and a PvP kit, I decided to tier 4 him, and obviously because he got his latest uniform, which should also help in PvP. Or so you would think. Let me just preface by saying, do not tier 4 this character. He is not good at tier 4. He can do some things, but honestly, this is probably one of the worst tier 4 showcases that I've had for a character that has a PvP kit, i.e. actual IIXCommanderXII. He just is wildly inconsistent and even struggles to take down some speed characters who aren't necessarily even at the top of the meta. He's just all around not really that great, and I think you're better off just saving your materials, especially for other characters even for PvE, but also for other characters that are likely upcoming in PvP, since we also know that Null is coming at some point this year, so it's probably best to save for him, considering that he is likely going to be pretty good in PvE, but also has the potential to be pretty solid in PvP, considering that he has that immortality effect, and they'll probably reduce the cooldown on his IIXCommanderXII. But there's also a ton of other characters that are likely going to be better than him anyway. And by him, I don't mean Null, but Hulkbuster. Don't tier 4 Hulkbuster. The video is going to be somewhat short because there isn't really too much to showcase for the character in either PvE or PvP, and keep in mind that I do have a decked out build on him. I got him to rank 6. I tried out a whole bunch of different CTPs for him. Nothing really worked too well. I think that a brilliant CTP of regen is what I settled on, just because I had one to throw on him, so that's pretty much what I tested with him at the very end, but I did try out a bunch of different ones that I'll cover in the PvP testing, and the PvE testing, of course, is without a damage proc, just to see how he does at base level. Hulkbuster isn't really going to be used in War Boss Legend, the main reason being that he doesn't have many restrictions that he satisfies, and besides that, he is categorized, I think, as an other character, which I don't think there is really any World Boss Legend stages that require an other character, so he's not really going to be used for that, and also because the character just isn't really that good for PvE content. I took him into a stage 24 of Null, as you can see here. I didn't use his leadership or any supports, and he was able to clear the stage with about 60 seconds left, which is okay, but for a character to be good at PvE, he should have been able to clear this with about 1 minute and 30 seconds left or 2 minutes left, and that would be a good indicator that they are useful for things like World Boss Legend. I don't advise building this character for PvE, but if you do want to do that, a CTP of Rage is going to be your best option, since you have to delay cancel a bunch of skills. You could potentially go with a CTP of Energy or Destruction, but you will run the risk of missing your proc on the third skill, which is the one that you want to finish on. Nothing too surprising here, but you can see that with the level 80 upgrade, he was able to complete this about 2 minutes faster than before, which is kind of the standard level of upgrade when you take a character from level 70 to level 80. To get a better sense of his improvement at tier 4, I also took him into a stage 34 of Gene, or the Dark Phoenix stage, whatever you want to call it. And he was not able to complete this, unsurprisingly enough, but you also have to keep in mind that I only had access to one damage support here, so that also is a factor. But regardless, he wasn't able to complete this, so the main test that I was looking for was to see how long it would take him to reach that 30 health bar mark, and that took about 4 minutes. If you do decide to make the same mistake I did and tier 4 the character, you'll notice that he gains a pretty substantial tier 4 stat bump. He gains about 20,000 physical attack on my account, and he has the highest base HP for a tier 4 character. You'll notice that for my account, again, the character's HP increased by 51,000, which is awesome, but also sad because it doesn't really make a difference. In terms of the striker for PvE, you can use Thor. If you don't want to use him, then you can use another character that has the Order Instinct tag and has an attack or damage increase on their striker skill. For PvP, you have options like Quicksilver and Jean Grey that both have the same instinct type and can give you the max level tier 4 skill. You can also use characters like Makari. She seems to do pretty well too, locking down the opponent so you can do damage, but oftentimes the character won't really hit the tier 4 skill, so it doesn't really matter too much. You can definitely see that the tier 4 striker and the tier 4 upgrade does help him in PvE, since he's able to reach that same 30 health bar mark about 2 minutes and 30 seconds faster than before, or roughly around there. But again, you can see that the character isn't really meant for PvE. Even with that tier 4 upgrade, he still had about 13 health bars left when time ran out. He won't be used in Alliance battle modes, not only because he doesn't have the cancel effects, I believe he only has burn, but because far better tier 4 combat hero characters exist, like Gladiator, Black Panther, Moon Knight, and so on. Regardless, I tested him there, and he was able to score around 8.6 million without a damage proc, and using his leadership and 2 supports, which again isn't really that great. He should have been able to score at least 9 million or more if he was good for this mode. The tier 4 striker does help Hulkbuster quite a bit for his score. I was able to increase it by around 2 million, but again, the character wasn't even able to hit 11 million with the tier 4, which is kind of an indicator that he would be good for this mode, but clearly isn't. The rotation for Hulkbuster is fairly straightforward. You do a 5, delay cancel about a half second, go into the 4th skill, which you delay cancel after about a half second, and then finish off with the 3rd skill. You delay cancel the 5th skill after you start to see the animations, and the 4th skill pretty much after he lands back on the ground. When you have your awakening skill available, you do the same rotation, but this time you cancel the 3rd skill into the awakened skill or the 6th skill. Even though the character is level 70 and without a damage proc, having a leadership and 2 supports, and having the type advantage versus the boss, he should have been able to complete this with around 6 minutes left if he again was kind of stronger for PvE, but that is not really the case. With the tier 4 upgrade, he was able to clear the same fight about 2 minutes and 20 seconds faster, which is very similar to the Dark Phoenix stage that I played before. And if you're wondering when to use the tier 4 skill, you basically use it whenever it's available, so that you can spam it as often as possible to get the advantage from the striker skill. It was kind of tough to test the character in PvP since Timeline is pretty much Sentry, Surfer, Adam Warlock, or Thanos, so I really had to dig to find some characters that were more on par with what the character could do. You could see that at level 70 he was able to bust a Hulk, I guess, take him down, and also was able to take out a Spider-Man since he had type advantage. Although Hulkbuster at first seems like he has a great kit for PvP, he has a massive HP pool, he has passive healing, active healing, damage reduction, invincible, a hit shield, iframe ignore counter, as well as a bunch of other stuff. He does have a lot of shortcomings, and or at least one of the major ones, is that his rotation isn't really that great. He doesn't benefit from all of these skills and effects because he mostly just activates his 5th skill and his 2nd skill, which is the iframe counter. He almost never goes into his 4th skill to actually get healing from it, or the 3rd skill to get a hit shield from that. Besides that, his skills are fairly slow and kind of clunky, which makes it very difficult for the character to actually fill up his tier 4 skill and get the benefit of that, as well as the barrier and the striker from it. So unlike characters like Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman, who also don't have the absolute stacked kit for PvP, they actually rotate through their skills fairly quickly and have access to their tier 4 skill, which does make a major difference. But Hulkbuster, on the other hand, doesn't really have that, so he's mostly just rotating his 5th and 2nd skill. The AI not using the 3rd skill, he also misses out on 65% increased attack, but even if the AI did use the 3rd skill, it actually leaves the character open to being killed because it isn't an iframe skill, and he stays in that skill for quite a long time. It doesn't have super guard break on it either to lock down the opponent. It's only found on the 2nd skill, which is good, but there comes another problem with the 2nd skill, which is that it has all of these great effects, like the iframe ignore counter, which actually isn't really that great. It would have been better if it was just an iframe ignore. But again, you have that iframe ignore, and then you also have super guard break on it, but it doesn't have the most important effect on it, which is penetration. The fact that the developers didn't give the character penetration in any way whatsoever, not even on the awakening skill or potentially even the tier 4 skill, really put this character down in terms of his PvP performance, because in order to get that penetration that pretty much all meta characters have now, but also have things like Invincible to protect them against penetration, so you kind of need penetration for your own character to deal with them, you would need to get something like CTP of Destruction on the character. But If you use a CTP of Destruction for Hulkbuster, that makes him very vulnerable and allows him to basically get one shot. Considering that his skills are kind of slow, you don't even really get to leverage the penetration or the damage proc from the CTP of Destruction. So really your best options are to build the character tanky and hope that you basically land your skills when the opponent's invincible or other defensive effects are down for you to actually deal damage to their health bar and take them out. I pretty much tested every single CTP on the character, but I'm mostly just showcasing the Mighty and Brilliant regen because that seemed to perform the best overall, and it is what I would recommend using on the character. I tried out a CTP of Greed and Destruction, he just dies too easily with that. A CTP of Refinement, the character just doesn't really benefit from it that much. He needs the guard break immunity to be able to actually hit his skills, even though he has super armor. But the bigger problem is that because he doesn't use that fourth skill to spam the heal from it, he doesn't really get much benefit from the healing aspect of the Refinement. That's pretty much the core of what that CTP provides. I initially thought that a CTP of Conquest would be the most ideal for him, but that CTP does sacrifice a bit of survival to get some extra offense, and from what I found for the character, he kind of needs as much survival as possible. So a CTP of Regen seemed to be the best option overall because he can't really tank a lot of hits from meta characters. So the most ideal survival tactic for him is to actually cancel the meta skills using the penetration effect from the CTP of Regen. That gave him the best survival chance, the most potential to be able to hit his Awakening and Tier 4 skill, which gave him the best chance overall to take out meta characters. A CTP of Authority didn't really compare to these options. The Authority would just give you Invincible for the most part, but the character opens with the 5th skill, so you're not really getting too much usage out of it. And because the character's HP pool is so massive, even though he doesn't spam the heals from the 4th skill, the healing that you get from things like Conquest and Regen especially help him the most. I wouldn't really recommend using Hulkbuster versus some of the top meta teams. He's not really going to stand a chance there. He's mostly just going to be good countering some strong speed types since he has the type advantage. The team that I decided to test was using Rescue's leadership, so she provides that shield, which really synergizes with his high HP, and also provides him with that constant healing and the debuff cleanse from the bubble, and they kind of help each other out in terms of survival. You can see here that he was able to clean up the first team, but you can see just how annoying the lack of penetration is since he's fighting a level 70 vision and is pretty much almost stalemated because he can't hit him when the character just constantly goes into Invincible, just has to basically land those hits when the Invincible is down. The second test I did was to take him up against some more speed types to see if he can actually handle them, and he was able to take down a Deadpool and a Black Swan, though it is kind of a little bit tricky with him. You can see that he's not really doing exceptionally well considering that he has a type advantage versus both of them. He still struggles to fight them because, again, he doesn't have that penetration for that iframe ignore counter to really do a lot of burst damage, and he just has to rely on surviving long enough to be able to deal damage again when their invincible is down. Using a CTP of Destruction just means that he'll probably just end up dying before he can actually do any real damage. For the third character, you can potentially use another machine character to benefit from Hulkbuster's support, but I would highly advise using another solid character that has iframe ignore because Hulkbuster won't really carry his weight if you just use another machine character that supports him but doesn't have iframe ignore. You can see what I'm talking about for the inconsistency here, since he had a type advantage versus all of these characters and was able to beat Black Swan and Spider-Man previously, but even with 1,000,000 health was basically just one shot even with a tanky build. So he really has some fundamental problems with his kit and just honestly doesn't do that well. By the way, if you're wondering why I was using Null in that third spot, it was because I previously ran Rescue with Null and Sabretooth, because both Null and Sabretooth don't really do that great in terms of damage. Sabretooth just needs to constantly go into his iframe ignores to be able to do damage, and Null has a long cooldown on his iframe ignore. Then I used Rescue's bubble to basically keep them alive while the other two were dealing damage, and it seemed to work out pretty well. So I tested the same thing here. You can potentially just use any other character that has an iframe ignore, but I figured since Null also has that immortality effect, it kind of beefs up the team overall. Again, I would probably use a character that's pretty strong to go with this team since Hulkbuster can't carry his own weight. I'm going to potentially be trying him out on some other teams to see if the debuff leadership or support was potentially the issue, but I don't really think that is because I could clearly see how he functioned in Timeline. As for Rescue's latest uniform, I don't think it really matters too much whether you have it or not. I would pick it up if you don't have a uniform on her at all, or if you're really into Alliance Conquest and have the crystals to spend. She does gain that 25% additional damage reduction added to her kit through her uniform passive, and if you couple that with the Steel Authority and other supports maybe, you can really help keep her alive, which in turn will keep your other characters alive because she'll stay in that bubble or keep that up to heal them up too. Similarly for Hulkbuster, if you're into Alliance Conquest, you can pick up the uniform, but regardless, if you're into Alliance Conquest or you're not, I would highly advise not really using your materials to tier 4 this character since there are better characters and probably will be more native characters coming that are far superior to him. And if the devs are watching, I would highly recommend that they transfer the heal from his 4th skill onto his 2nd skill, his counter iframe ignore skill, so that he can actually activate it more frequently, considering that his passive healing is only 3% as opposed to the 4 or 5% that most other characters have. Even though it's just 1 or 2% less, it does make a considerable difference over a long period of time. Other than that, they should definitely consider also adding penetration somewhere in his kit, even if it's on his awakening skill or his tier 4 skill, though it would likely be better if it's just added as an activation effect on his 5th skill, maybe his 2nd skill, since those are the ones that he pretty much activates only in his skill rotations. But yeah, that pretty much does it for Hulkbuster. Pretty disappointing that a character that has that much health and that many PvP effects just really doesn't do well at all. Just really isn't that good. He's pretty much mid-level. And frankly, it's getting a little bit tiring reviewing some of these characters with half-baked PvP kits. If they're going to make a character for PvP, just give them the stuff they need. If they make characters for PvE, they give them the things that they need. Chain hit, guaranteed crit, the number of hits on their skills, and even damage accumulation. So if they do the same for PvP, just give them everything they need. Don't waste people's time on uniforms that they're not going to get. It's just, frankly, it's kind of annoying. That pretty much does it for this one. In the next one, I'll likely take a look at Iron Man and War Machine. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, potentially sharing with others. It can help them out and definitely helps my channel grow. And as always, I appreciate people taking the time to watch my videos, so thank you. But the video is now over.